So good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Chestnut. It's my honor to serve as the Director of Recreation and Parks for the City of Rockville. First, I want to thank you all for choosing to participate in this Reimagining RedGate Park process. The Mayor and Council of Rockville value your input and appreciate your interest in the future of RedGate Park. Our purpose tonight is to solicit your input on the latest iteration of a concept plan, learn from you how we might improve the concept, and then to incorporate what we learn into the plan before presenting the modified concept to Mayor and Council this summer. In addition to our consultant, we have staff from Planning, Public Works, and Recreation and Parks here to listen to you and answer any questions you might have this evening. If we go to the next slide, please. And the next one. That's not what I had. Okay. Well, following direction from the Mayor and Council, the scope of work for reimagining RedGate Park was adopted in March 2020. Drawing from the statistically valid survey that was conducted as part of the Recreation and Parks Department's strategic plan and augmented by a community input process that was conducted during the spring of 2021, we were able to initially identify a top 10 list of desired and desirable amenities for RedGate Park. In October 2021, the Mayor and Council received an update on the planning work, reviewed the top 10 amenities that had revealed themselves through community input. In February of 22, the Mayor and Council reviewed 3 site plan concepts that incorporated various interpretations of the 10 top amenities for RedGate Park as a key step in the development of a long-term plan for this important city property. Mayor and Council then provided input and direction that led to the single concept that we will be reviewing today. Throughout this evening, we will be sharing information and visuals with you, and we'll also be asking some questions of you that will help inform our next steps, as well as guiding the evolution of RedGate Park. I have to ask one of our more technologically skilled folks to explain the survey software. Carla, can you take a moment and explain that to folks?
Certainly. At the presentation, we will take a moment and pause and cue all those who are participating this evening that you will have the opportunity via some poll and survey questions to provide some feedback to us. You will have about a minute to provide your feedback, but don't fret if you cannot and have some technical challenges or issues with the mobile device that you are using. You will have the opportunity to provide your feedback via an online survey, but we will let you know once the polling is active, and you will see it on your screen on your mobile device to the right, where you will interactively be able to provide your poll responses.
So here we have moved to the first series of questions. And do the folks have an opportunity to answer these? Here we go.
You should be seeing those coming up on the right-hand side panel here. So feel free to take a moment and provide your responses.
Okay, if we could move on to the next slide, please. And the next one. Okay, working from the top 10 list of amenities and reflecting the subsequent input and direction from Mayor and Council, this modified list of amenities has risen to the top and is what you will be asked to review and comment on the next part of the evening. We are fortunate to have an extremely capable and creative consultant to work with, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Tom McGilloway, principal with Mahan Reichel, who will take over from here, and I'll come back at the end when we get to the discussion period. So, Tom?
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, everyone. It's good to be here this evening to present the concept plan. So I'm going to be going through primarily the recommendations in the concept plan and a series of maps and images to share with you. And throughout, we'll have some polling questions to ask as well, just like we did with the last one. But I wanted to just, for those of you that participated in the mayor and council meeting back in February, I wanted to just share 2 slides again that really are informing a lot of the work we do. We did an extensive site analysis of the existing conditions. And this slide shows the landform. The red color is the highest elevation ground. So you can see this ridge that runs the length of the site. And then the green areas are the lower elevations. And so you have these series of ridge tops and these natural bowl formations. And that really informed a lot of what we're doing in the designs. And I'll explain that as we go through the concept. The other thing we're looking at, as you all know, there's a lot of pathways throughout the park. This map on the left shows the red areas are steep slopes greater than 8% gradient. And the green area is 5% or less. And generally, for accessibility and mobility, you want to have a pathway that's under 5% or less. And you can see a lot of the pathways go through steep terrain. And in park planning, one of the things that is very important is that on pathways that you create circuits and loops. And in this area, the center of the slide, this area dashed in white, is really the only loop you could do right now that's all 5% or less gradient, fairly level. Now you could go off and walk off in this direction or in this direction, but eventually you'll hit some steep slopes, so you would have to backtrack if you're not able to navigate this slope. So that's important to keep in mind as we talk about the trail network as we go forward. We want to make connections so that we have more pathways for those with some mobility issues. This is the existing conditions of the site. It's, as you know, it was a former golf course, so the light green area is what were the lawn areas and the tees and fairways. The darker green are the existing tree cover. You can see the different hedgerows that were defining the fairways and greens. The parking lot is located here, the existing entrance here, and the clubhouse is here. This is a Taft Court and 6 Taft Court in this area. So then what we have here now is the overall master plan recommendation. So this just shows the whole site together. I'm going to be zooming in and start at the top, then hit the middle and hit the lower at a larger scale, so it's easier to see some of the information on here. But it uses
excuse me, let me just interrupt for 1 second. I'm sorry. And can we back up 1 slide, please? I don't want to assume that everyone on this call realizes that 6 Taft Court building, and Tom had circled it just a moment ago, that's also city property. So just so you know, the city owns that building. There's no one in it yet. It will be offices eventually, but that is also city property. Thank you, Tom.
Great. Thank you, Tim. So I'm going to start at the top half of the slide here, then hit the middle slide, and then the bottom slide in the next pages. But essentially, it will be showing where some of these amenity areas that Tim shared will be occurring. So if we look at the top half of the property at first, you can see the existing tree cover in this symbol. This is over an aerial photograph, so you see existing trees. The pathway network, you may notice that some of the pathways are more of a gray shade, and then some are a brighter white shade. The gray shade are existing pathways, and then like for here and here and along here, the white are proposed pathway connections that we're making. You might see some zigzags like this. That means it's creating a switchback down the slope so that could be a more of a gradual grade and easier to navigate for people. These dash paths represent existing paths that are very steep. And if you've walked some of these, you know that some of these sections of pathways are very steep. So you'll see that throughout. And then you see a connection here. This is part of an existing path and so forth. So up here, we have mostly open areas. We have a lot of existing forest. You're seeing these pathways. The brighter green is what we're proposing to remain as a passive area, a lawn area that might be mowed either weekly or every 2 weeks. So it's a somewhat maintained area. And I'll talk about some of these other areas when we get to the Arboretum, but this would be somewhat maintained so it could have some passive play or informal gathering areas throughout the park. And then down below you see 6 Taft Court that Tim had just mentioned. We have the clubhouse right here, a proposed playground, and a picnic area here that will show up on the next slide as well. And then, so here we are in the center of the site. We just talked about the renovated clubhouse, and I'll zoom in on some of these areas in more detail as well, showing the playground. 6 is a picnic lawn area. One of the things we heard during the mayor and council was a desire for picnic tables that are close to restrooms that would be available in the clubhouse, but also close to the playground area. This whole center area is, if you remember that diagram I showed with the ridge line, this is all at a fairly similar elevation. So once you're up here, you're fairly level. There's still some grade change, but it's fairly level. We'll need to have some better accessibility from the parking up to the clubhouse, but you can see that here in the center. This is at number 11 is the realigned main entrance road to align that with the intersection going across to Mark Twain Park to make that a safer intersection, using the existing drive, the existing parking area. We have community gardens to the right that came up in the mayor and council meeting, and then an amphitheater here in this natural bowl that overlooks the existing ponds. Again, you can see the pathways. The gray pathways are what's existing, and then the white are connections. You could see, for example, we have this connection that gets down to the amphitheater, and that's zigzagging down this slope so that it can be more of for people with mobility issues, that could be an easier way to get to the amphitheater from the parking. Existing access is very steep, so we want to accommodate that. And then you could see we have a series of loops with the pathway systems, and I'll hit more on that in a little bit when we talk about those. And then if we go to the very southern end of the site along Norbeck Road, we have the existing hiker-biker trail along Norbeck Road. Again, you can see a lot of existing forest. You could see some stream valleys. This is all very low area. A lot of the pathways that you see in white dashes are existing paths that are very steep, going straight down those slopes. And you can see that we're proposing some areas where you could have more of an easier way to navigate some of those slopes with some switchback turns. You could also see the woodlands. The existing woodlands in this area are very fragmented. We have some along Norbeck Road. We have a stand in the middle of the site, but then where the golf course was, it's very open in between. And so that will, when we talk about the Arboretum, I'll talk a little more about how we can join those forest stands together. So if we zoom in on the clubhouse area, again, this is the existing building. This is the existing maintenance and golf cart storage area. One of the things that we're suggesting is that there maybe be some expanded area, paved area with permeable paving outside of the clubhouse to accommodate some larger gatherings. We have the existing deck, which is a wonderful resource, but there might be some opportunities to provide some gathering areas outside of the rec house as well, the clubhouse as well. This large lawn area, you can see that we're some of the existing paths in this gray color here and here, and then new paths with white. And what we're doing is creating a series of smaller loops around this playground area, around the picnic lawn, the 2 picnic lawns, so that this could be, a very, if you wanted to do a small circuit of walkway, you could do this area. You could access the different picnic areas, and then also the restrooms from along this pathway network. Some photographs of the existing clubhouse. It will need some renovations. The deck is fairly recent addition. It's a wonderful amenity overlooking the property. the building here. This is the main entrance. So, we would envision some improvements and enhancements to some of these outdoor paved areas to make it more attractive. There may be more windows added to the building, but that's yet to be determined with some further assessment of the building itself. So we now have another polling question, and that's going to come up. Now, one thing, when I'm in presenter mode, I can't see the polling questions showing up for me. So once I hear that we get started, I'll give a timer and we'll have 30 seconds to answer this. So.
Yeah, the polling questions are up, so even though Tom can't see them, if everyone would please give your responses to these polling questions.
There's a question about programmable patio. So programmable patio would really be just some space that you could, if you had an event inside the clubhouse, that you could maybe extend it outside too. Say if maybe there might be one event on the deck that you could have some outdoor patio space that you could also have some events. There might be a speaker, you might have some tables set up out there as well. Okay, we've got another couple seconds for the polling. And again, I can't see the polling results, so I'm not sure if they're up or not. Okay, we're going to move on to the next. I'm sorry, I'm having some difficulties here. I somehow got in annotation mode and I need to get out of that. Won't let me advance. Can someone?
Can you hit the escape button? Will that help?
It's not. Let me stop sharing for a minute and then I'll continue on. So I'm going to share. I apologize for that. Okay, so here we are, the picnic areas and the nature play area. So that's just above the clubhouse. I talked about that a little earlier. So the playground, this is right on top of a knoll. It's a hilltop location, pretty much at the same elevation as the clubhouse, and it falls off on all sides. So you can see there's the perimeter pathway system that runs around the edge. This would likely be fenced, have an ornamental fence around it, and a variety of play equipment located in it. And I have some images of that. It'd be a nature-based playground. We also have then the picnic lawn here with some tables that some could be fixed, some could be movable. They're near the playground, they're near the clubhouse area where there's restrooms, and then another picnic area over in this area. And then for the picnic areas, we could envision that there'd be some tables, some might have some coverings over, and that's something we'd want to hear from you on. Some would be on pads. We'd have some ADA and handicap accessible tables. They might be in some groupings. But then there would be also these open lawn areas where people could set up their own picnics, whether they're at an official picnic table or not. And there might be the ability to move some tables together to have a larger grouping, or move them apart to have separate groupings as well. And then also maybe some in the lawn areas could set up some informal badminton or other games that are not permanent fixtures, but part of the picnic that you have. And then on the playground, it would be looking at primarily emphasizing nature-based play and creative play, some equipment that really fits into the more natural landscape, more natural materials, the use of wood, using hillsides, using some natural features. This is a willow tunnel. This is a kind of a bird's nest or something, so it could really fit in with the natural character of RedGate Park. Now, at this master plan stage, we're not going to be designing the playground. The master plan would identify where the playground is located, and then that would become a separate design project where the actual features and equipment are designed and developed as part of that. So our next polling question is here, and that'll come up shortly. So we want to hear the first polling question relates to the picnic areas, and then we have one related to the playground areas. Okay, maybe 5 more seconds. Okay, and then let's move on to the next polling question related to nature play.
It's a travesty.
We are unable to see the polling questions to answer them. It's not showing up on the right side of my screen.
Okay, thank you for that. So can whoever's controlling the polling questions have them appear?
I can see them.
I can see them, but I can't rate them.
I just got it. Can we go back to the first slide, the first set of questions?
This one?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And at the very end of this presentation, there'll be a question that if there's anything we had missing or any other comments that you wanted to address, there's a link to the website that you could provide some input there. And we'll also have some discussion at the end of this presentation. Okay, and the next polling question of nature play. We'll give you about a minute here. Okay, now we want to talk a little bit about the amphitheater. And so this is to the right here, you see the existing parking lot, the existing roadway that comes in here. We're showing a stage and then the seating area. Now, one of the things, if you remember, I talked earlier about the landform underneath, they show up a little bit, these white lines that are faded back are the topography lines. And so the natural landform creates a natural bowl here. The hillside is going down from the parking toward the pond. So this is a very natural area to have an amphitheater. And so we're showing some kind of a stage, a pavilion, some permeable paving that could provide service and access that if there'd be a performance and a truck needed to get down there for equipment. This could also be an event space. We're showing to allow a trail around the ponds that's showing actually a deck and a water overlook so that we don't have to do any grading adjacent to the pond. A deck could be built in to provide some overlook and still allow for the natural gradient to occur underneath that decking. Potential, this area here, there may be some fixed seating that would be in the form of some low seat walls or benches, and then the rest of this area could be lawn seating. These features we're showing here could either be some, portable shade structures that are people bring with them, or they could be stones in the hillside that people sit on. But anyway, it's mostly just lawn seating. And then this would be a pathway that would take you down. Again, I showed that earlier. It's switchbacking down the hill so that could provide some accessible access. And there could be some fixed seating that are ADA accessible as well with the amphitheater. We're showing a gate here. This would be a wide pathway. It's probably shown wider than it needs to be right here. That would allow for service vehicles to get down here and access the stage area, but that could be gated off to keep people from driving down there on a daily basis. This stage area could also be used for events. It could be a covered pavilion, and this area could be for community gatherings, not just a performance space. And some images that we're showing, the amphitheater, we're showing it, the size we have plenty of area. We're looking at this time potentially 250 fixed seats that might be like in this bottom example that are some retaining walls built into the hillside, or benches. And then the rest could be lawn seating like you see here in this image. The stage, this is a stage in Greenville, South Carolina. It's when it's not used for performances, it's also a covered pavilion. So there could be just a community event that occurs underneath it with some overhead canopy. Because this amphitheater is adjacent to the pond, would see something very open like this so that you have your views to the ponds in the background. Just some more examples of amphitheaters. This is at the an arboretum, Swarthmore Arboretum. There could be trees that come up into it. It can be part of the arboretum experience. This is an arboretum or an amphitheater in Texas. You could see it's being set up as used for an event in this case and not a performance. This is the Frederick that has fixed individual seats. We're probably not looking in that direction. It would be more something like these low walls that fit into the landscape better. And then open lawn seating that you see here, so people could bring blankets or their own folding chairs. And then at the pond area, there some imagery showing what that deck overlook could be, providing a little more engagement with the pond. There could be that part of the trail system as it traverses the pond might look like this. And this could also be a place for events during a performance. There might be some vendor tents set up in this area while there's a performance going on in the amphitheater. Again, these are just precedent images. It's not the exact design. The exact design would be developed after the master plan is developed. So we have another poll question here for the amphitheater, and I'll take my cue from Nelson on this text. Okay, we're going to move on now to the community gardens, and this is we had some discussion on this during the mayor and council meeting back in February. So we were just off to the left here at the amphitheater area. Again, this is existing parking. This is an area, it's a fairly level hilltop area. We're showing a fenced area. This would probably accommodate, 25 to 30 community garden plots. It would be fenced in to protect it from animals, primarily and deer. We're showing potentially a new hedgerow of trees along here. Community gardens sometimes can maybe aren't always the most attractive elements. So we wanted to put this is at the top of the hill and then going down so that as you enter into the park, you're still looking across this lawn and you have this very natural image that much of what you do today as you enter RedGate Park. And so this hedgerow could help buffer that and build upon some of the existing hedgerows on the site. We're showing a small area of permeable paving that could have shed or mulch and compost stations along here. There would be water and electrical service here. And then we're showing there's some existing trees in here. I thought this could be a small gathering area. There might be a couple picnic tables or so forth. So I know the community gardens near me here in Baltimore. It's a really strong, the members that garden there all know each other well, and it's a strong sense of community. So having some gardening and maybe some workspace could be helpful there. And then there could be the ability that this could expand in the future as well if it's successful and desirable. And just some images of community gardens. You know, they, again, not this, this is not this shed would be proposing, but there should be some kind of shed for members to keep tools. There should be water sources, an organization for individual beds with a pathway system in between, and then some kind of fence, you know, generally a tall fence, but deer can jump over fence pretty well, lower fences. So having a tall fence, whether it's ornamental like this or has another look to it, that would be determined. But that would be generally an element of the community garden. So as we talk about the community gardens, another polling question up, we'll give you a minute or so to answer this. Okay, now let's move on to the Arboretum and Trails, and this is really going to be the predominant part, park element that we have here. So again, we have the overall park plan, and what we've added on here, again, like I've done in the past, I'll start with the top half, then the middle half, and the lower half. But we've added on some elements in addition to the existing forest. We're showing potential areas for new forest, which is afforestation. We're showing some special feature landscapes that might be limited mow areas, meaning they're mowed once or twice a year. So that it tends to get taller grasses most of the year, and then they're just mowed to keep some of the woody materials out of them. Have some meadows, intentional meadows, and pollinators, pollinator landscapes and gardens, maybe some sensory gardens, riparian gardens around the ponds. So all of those could be some of these special feature landscapes. And then the passive area, lawns in the brighter green that I mentioned earlier, that would be mowed on a fairly regular basis and could be used for passive gathering. So if we look now at the north half of the property, you could see from what I showed before, number 1 is existing forest. And what we're showing here at this symbol of number 2 is showing an afforestation. This would be a good candidate for an afforestation in new forest to really join these fragmented forest areas together to create more of a connected woodland and improve that habitat. Similarly, along the east side of the property, there's a stream valley along the property boundary here, increasing that riparian buffer. So adding forest along here. Again, the dashed is an existing steep walkway that could remain in place and forest around it. And then you could see some of these yellow areas are what would be some of these feature landscapes. It might be meadows, emphasizing pollinator plants, sensory gardens, and wildflowers, again, all native plants. And then along the edges here, the Arboretum can feature some of the existing trees that are in place, but then could also add some new specimen tree planting, again, natives, but some of the native oaks and maples and beech and other trees that are common to this area as feature and specimens within the landscape. But then there could also be those same species within their natural woodland habitat. So really creating a variety of Arboretum experiences. And then the pathway loops that you see here would be different ways to experience that. Someone might come out and just experience this portion of the Arboretum. Someone else might want to venture down into this hillside meadow, down into the woodlands down in this area. So it creates for a variety of experiences as you move through the site. As we look at the middle of the site, again, this is the clubhouse, the amphitheater, and the community gardens. We could see these yellow areas are predominantly unmanicured lawn areas. They would be meadows. We'd like to see some of those areas as areas come up right up to the playground edge, so that as you're at the playground, you could also maybe see some pollinator plants and some butterfly attracting gardens along the edge of the playground, so they're incorporated into and around the existing meadows. Same with around the periphery of the amphitheater, that these landscapes extend out and extend into the site. You could also see, move to the southern half of the site now. Again, I talked earlier about the forest, how fragmented it was down here, and this is a lot of stream valley. This is some sensitive riparian areas, of wetlands and floodplains along these trails. So really connecting all these forests with new forest areas and creating a larger forest stand to improve that overall ecological habitat. We're still showing this steep hillside as a meadow, hillside meadow that could be more for expanded forest in there, or it could stay as meadow. But again, you can see some of the existing steep trails that provide access to those areas, as well as some new trails that provide some switchbacks and more accessible access to some of these areas. And then from the images, we have some great, wonderful existing forests there that we want to preserve and protect, continue to manage for invasives and remove invasives. But then there's the meadows and woodlands, and creating more bird habitat. The edges of woodlands are very important habitat where they transition from the woods to the meadows. So creating and protecting some of these environments, some more riparian meadows along the water, wetland edges and the pond edges, and then having some interpretation there as well. And then looking at some of these areas, not just as isolated pockets, but where can we integrate them? This is a playground at the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, and we utilize some of the native plant gardens and pollinators actually in the garden space. This is up in Brooklyn, where some of those plants are right adjacent to some of the gathering areas, so that people that might be coming just to use the playground or gather outside the clubhouse, but they still have exposure to some of these important ecological habitats. And then for the Arboretum, really, we would envision the entire park being an Arboretum. Some of those lawn areas that I mentioned, you could see here, the land for a lot of that central lawn area that we have on the plan is along the ridge top. And you could see here from Druid Hill Park in Baltimore how that really accentuates that landform, and you see the woodlands in the distance. And then that lawn area can be a display for feature trees, a lot of which are existing, but a lot which would be planted over time. Some of the edges might be incorporated with some native flowering trees and so forth. And you could see, but then those lawn areas could also be informal gathering. There might be an Arboretum tour group or an event that wants to have a class out amidst the Arboretum and utilize some of those lawn areas for those purposes. So we have a couple polling question related to the Arboretum. We'll get that started and give you a minute or so here. Okay, and then the last major section of the presentation deals with the trail network, and we're showing a variety of trails. Again, you could see it overall in the overall plan in this version. It's a combination of paved trails, natural surface trails, and what we want to be able to have is a series of loops and networks. Someone might want to do a very long walk around the perimeter of the property. Someone else might want to do just a shorter walk, or they may only be able to do a shorter walk. So, we're just, again, these are just examples. They're not necessarily where the exact trails would be, but this is just showing how from the trail network we show, someone could do a perimeter around the whole park. And if they wanted a long loop, this is just under 3 miles of walking. And again, this is all utilizing a combination of existing and proposed trails that are at a fairly gradual slope, so they could be anyone with mobility challenges could follow along here. Or there might be a series of smaller loops. Someone might want to just do a loop around this ridgetop lawn, or go down into the valley at the north or the valley at the south, or a small loop around the ponds from the parking lot, or off to the meadows in the southwest. So it creates a lot of variety for ways for users to experience the park. And most of these are, some of these are very short, some are, in the average of a half a mile. So different loop experiences. And then when we add in the existing steep paths, these would not be accessible, but someone wanted to have more of a challenge with some of the steeper slopes, could utilize some of these, combine these sections of trails with any of their loop experiences. So planning for a lot of variety and flexibility. The trails could be, we would envision a series of paved trails that could accommodate some bikes, as well as wheelchairs and strollers, but then a lot of natural surface trails as well, and boardwalk sections, stepping stones over some of the lower tributaries. And then there are platforms and boardwalks that it could allow you to engage with some of the water features, or cross some drainage swales that allow the water to flow, but the pedestrians to be elevated above that. And then looking at opportunities for education along the way. So you might be there just for exercise, but there may be opportunities where we have some of those afforestation areas to provide some interpretation as why this is important. This is from Prospect Park in New York and Brooklyn that does that very well. So we want to land on a polling question for trails. We'll get that started. Okay, and then some general overall things, regardless of where we are on site, whether it's near the playground or the clubhouse or the picnic area, would be incorporating environmental site design. So stormwater management, rain gardens, looking at how they could be integrated, not just plopped off on the side somewhere, but integrated with the playground, integrated with the parking area, or along the picnic areas or near the clubhouse, so that they become landscape features with some opportunities to educate, provide interpretation, and not just a kind of a utilitarian function. So our last polling questions are listed here. These are really dealing with the overall park. So just want a sense of, from the overall direction of what we shared tonight, if we're on the right track, and some questions about the balance of active and passive uses. Okay, and then I referenced earlier, so we recognize that with the polling questions can be fairly limiting, and so we want to make sure that if there's something else that we need to know, or something that you think is missing from the plans, please go to the website and add your thoughts. This is the website address right here, and it was just entered into the chat box that you can copy and paste as well. So we'd love to hear some additional input that you have on anything that you think was missing, or anything we need to know, anything in particular that you really liked that stood out to you would be very helpful.
One specific thing, and thank you, Tom. One specific thing I would like to just add as folks are considering this final question. Every time I go by RedGate, doesn't matter what day of the week it is, what the weather is, I see lots of folks with their pets. So I would be very curious if anyone is going to suggest other things we need to know, if you would include your thoughts on a dog park. Thank you.
Okay, and so Tim, I'll turn it back over to you for next steps.
The next steps are, as you see there on the slide, we have one more of these public input meetings this Saturday. Then our intention is the work group is going to merge all this feedback and input into the concept plan, and then re-present it to mayor and council in the summer. I think we tentatively have a date in July, but definitely this summer. And if we are successful in bringing a concept to them that they adopt, then we will have some funding in FY23. And for those of you who don't know the city's fiscal year, July 1 through June 30. So we will have some monies available to start the design process, which will probably take at least a year, but a design process with all the details for the development of the reimagined RedGate Park. But as you can see, when that actually happens, our crystal ball isn't that good yet. It's to be determined. So, this is the point where I'm going to need help from our technical folks to help us make sure we get the questions answered. I believe everyone has the ability to raise their hand if they have a question or a comment. We do have, again, we have staff from Public Works, Planning, and Recreation and Parks, as well as Tom. We will all do our best to try to answer your questions. So Carla or Nelson, I don't know who's managing the hand raised.
Yes, good evening. I can go ahead and handle the hand raising function. Here I see that there is already at least one participant that has raised their hand. We can go ahead and start with DK. You want to go? Mm-hmm.
Hi, thank you very much. Great presentation. First of all, I just wanted to second the request for a large dog park, maybe fencing off one of those meadows. When we go hiking there and bring our dog on a leash, most of the people we see there have pets with them. I was also just curious about the amphitheater. It's a nice feature, absolutely. I'm just curious if there's been any thought as to like what groups or performances or what you're envisioning for that. Because, we have the Manor, we have Rockville Town Center. So I'm just curious, just to make sure it gets use. I mean, is there any thought other than, oh, gee, we want an amphitheater?
I can take the first crack at answering that one. And then if any of the Recreation and Parks staff or anybody else wants to chime in, please do. A lot of the answer to that question is to be determined. It's going to depend on the size and the scale of the amphitheater as to the types of performances. I would anticipate the Rockville Concert Band. I would anticipate the Rockville Little Theater. I would anticipate the Lyric Opera Group. I would anticipate some of the citywide special events, like I don't know about Hometown Holidays. We're really having to adjust that because of the lack of space in town center. But some of our smaller citywide events, I could see being there as well. But as Tom mentioned when he was going through the amphitheater discussion, Now, there are lots of other uses when it's not being used for performance, from classes to just spontaneous gathering places. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I can see lots of uses for an amphitheater there.
And I think if I could just add, reiterate, that's why we think, having as much flexibility in the design as possible so that it doesn't, when it's not being used for performance, that it looks like just an empty performance venue, that it could be used for other things as well. So that would be a careful design consideration.
Very good. We can go ahead and move on to the next person that has raised their hand, Mr. Patrick McCabe.
Mr. McCabe, you may be muted.
Correct.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Everything looks great. I just wanted to add that we'd shot a few emails back and forth about the possibility of incorporating a mixed-use field for rugby, Gaelic games, Australian rules. It's a little bit bigger than soccer fields. We don't have one in the county. With 500 soccer fields, but we don't have a facility to accommodate those games. It also may be an idea to include a walking track. It gets dark in the evenings most of the year. So maybe a walking track that has lights where people can feel safe. But yeah, it's just some ideas that would like to put forward to the group. Maybe in the passive area.
Thank you.
And I believe those groups would be willing to do some fundraising, and field permits and things would be a source of income, over the next number of years to the park.
Thank you.
Martha, you may ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think it was well done. I'm sorry if I missed it. What is the parking capacity going to be, and where will that be located? Do you plan to expand it?
I'll start that one. Tom, let me start and then you can go from there. At this point in time, we are not looking at adding any parking. No, not a single additional parking space. We're not going to completely finish whatever RedGate is going to evolve into in the first suite. So we will respond and reconsider as need demands. But at this point in time, we're not looking at adding parking spaces. And then Tom, I know you have further detail.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, because I did forget to mention that one of the things we were looking at, as Tim pointed out, Sixth Half Court is owned by the city, and one of the things we've been exploring is that on evenings and weekends, that parking there could also be used for park visitors when they wouldn't be conflicting with the needs for that building. There's also, with the pathway system that connects over to Sixth Half Court, there's a lot of parking lots with the office buildings or warehouse buildings on Sixth Half that would be empty during the evenings and weekends, and there may be some opportunities for some shared parking partnerships there. So I'm glad you asked the question, because I meant to bring that up during the presentation.
Thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you.
Kirsten Kaplan.
Thank you. A great presentation, Tom and Tim. I know a ton of work went into this on behalf of staff and everything. So I think this is a great plan. I'm speaking as a private citizen tonight, not in my role on the advisory board. And Tom, I just wanted to reiterate what Tim said about dogs. I'm at RedGate probably 5 times a week. And there is a huge demand for large areas where dogs can kind of run. And I'm thinking in particular about what I sort of consider the back side of the park that sort of backs up to Norbeck, where there are some really steep grades back there. Right now, it's kind of just unmaintained meadow, tall grass area. And then there's a steep downhill down towards the stream. And I'm wondering if that area, sort of what I would consider the back of the park, where it is a little bit inaccessible might be a good location to have something like a large wild dog park.
That could be a logical area for that. So I think we'll be discussing that with the team. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Ole and Peter Carlson.
Hello.
Hello.
I enjoyed the presentation. I think you're on the right track. I have a suggestion. Given that this is a forested place, I think the city ought to put out a suggestion to anyone who would like to take big tree trunks from somewhere, their own house, or maybe some that are there already, and carve totem poles or chainsaw sculptures that you could either put up in a one area as a tree-based sculpture garden, or scatter around the place. That's all.
And I wanted to say I love the idea of the park being as natural and useful for everybody as you're designing it. I also have a little concern with the use of the theater pavilion and how much use it would get. Somebody else had already spoken about that. But I also think it's probably a necessary feature too. And
Are you, if I could clarify, is your concern there with that it wouldn't get enough use, or that it would be used too much, or could you elaborate?
I was concerned it wouldn't get used enough for the
Okay.
expense of having it or building it and all.
Thank you.
And then the difficulty with parking if it got very popular. But we don't want it to get too popular. Thank you.
Thank you. The tree-based sculpture idea, that's, I don't know, Druid Hill Park in Baltimore, there's a couple of those large tree trunks when the trees died and were removed, that a sculptor came and sculpted some of those, and they're pretty fun. So love that idea.
Baltimore is not the only place with those. We have some of those too.
All right, well, they're the only ones I've seen. So.
Chris, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
can.
Okay, so I go there for birding. So it sounds to me like you're not taking down trees, which is great because there's a big variety of birds that go there and for feeding, including nesting Baltimore Orioles. And some of the meadows where you're going to add trees are actually good for birds too. They like, some of the areas where okay. Just some of the areas where there's like something growing, about a foot tall are good for birds. They like those areas as well as the trees. And so being a birder, I would not be in favor of dog parks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Bullock.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can, but we do get quite a bit of echo.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
we
Can
do.
you hear me now? Can 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 you hear me now? Oh shoot.
Ms. Bullock, we can come back to you once your microphone is We're still getting quite a bit of echo. Mr. Joseph Jordan, if you can, please.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Tim and Chris, I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to commend you guys in the city for the great job you're doing. As you know, I was a 35-year player golf at RedGate. I was very much involved with RedGate Advisory Committee and worked for years to make sure that RedGate stayed either as a golf course or as what it's turning into now, RedGate Park. It's sort of a bittersweet to see it happen as a park, but I'm really pleased to see what's going on. And I commend you and thank you. And I also want to put a vote in for a dog park. Actually, I had sent something in the chat earlier, so I would love to see a dog park over there. And thanks again. Just appreciate it.
Joe, it's good seeing you. It's been a minute.
Yes.
There are some questions in the Q&A feature. Just wanted to flag that for staff.
Yes, we are aware of the questions in the Q&A feature. We certainly hope to get to those questions before the end of the meeting. Ms. Sarah Bullock, do you want to try asking your question again?
We may have to come back to her again.
Yeah, Monica Berger.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the presentation. It was really informative. I wanted to ask for one of my questions would be, I understand that the natural features lend themselves to building an amphitheater, but we already have a stage in Rockville Town Square. At Glenview Mansion, you could build a stage, and there's already infrastructure there that you wouldn't have to really build out. My concern with RedGate as as a performance venue is it's really not walking distance for very many residents, so it forces residents to drive there if there's an event. The advantage to having events in Rockville Town Square is, it's really walkable for a large number of residents of the city. So that was one thing. I would also like to pipe up against adding lights to light it up at night. That was mentioned by one of the other participants. There are a lot of people who go there for birding. A lot of, well, I don't want to speak for others, but I feel that it's very important to keep it as wild as possible to make room for wildlife and the animals that call it home right now. And if we add lights, that's going to be really disruptive to them. I would also discourage a dog park, and I understand that people love their dogs, but again, because of the wildlife, it would be great to keep it wild and meadows, forests, great, walking paths, great, but kind of keep it wilder than some of the ideas that are coming up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Susan Eisendrath.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. It was exciting to see all of the ideas come together. I'd have to agree about the wildness. We have very few areas that have the number of birds that we have in the park. It's pretty fantastic that we have such a natural area. And I'm really excited to hear that you're going to be or one of the proposals is to expand the forest area, because that will also allow for more naturalized areas. And wanted to just put in a plug for the possibility of a food forest that would also feed the birds, as well as show examples of how we can feed people too with a food forest. And there are other examples in Mount Rainier and Hyattsville and a few other areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's one of the exciting things about the Arboretum feature is that, it could cover such a wide variety of planting and landscapes and gardens and forest types. So thank you for that comment.
John Becker?
Thank you. Great presentation. I've just got 4 points here I'm going to mention, and I'll put more information into the RedGate website thing. First of all, we got to make this a no drone zone, because last year my wife and I were walking around, and some people had some drones out there at treetop, and it sounded like a hornet's nest. It's a natural location, and I think there's other places that could be used for drones. The second thing is I hope you maintain the golf cart trails from the existing golf carts, because the elevation changes are just one hell of a workout. And I agree that they should be supplemented with something that is more attuned to people who are mobility challenged, as far as bicycles and people in walkers and wheelchairs. The third thing I was going to say is the RedGate landscape sign going to be repurposed, reused, or abandoned? And the final thing was, could somebody please explain what a riparian garden and a sensory garden is? And I thank you very much for your time.
I can go with the riparian garden and sensory garden. So thanks. Sorry. Every once in a while I throw in the jargon there. So riparian is like a water edge. So like along the pond edge, planting that's more associated with the pond and the wetland landscape. The same with stream valleys, that riparian buffer is a stream valley buffer. So plants that you would find in a stream valley would help to protect those drainage corridors. The sensory garden is more that, it might be something that you're not just looking at, but the plants have a different feeling, like a touch to them or smells. Even in, the one participant mentioned the food forest. So they're plants that you might even be able to eat the berries and things. So sense in other ways, not just by looking at them, but by touch and smell and so forth, especially for, someone that's is blind or doesn't, can experience the gardens in other ways.
And John, what was your question about the RedGate sign?
Shall be repaired, reused, repurposed, or abandoned and taken out.
I can't imagine that when the ribbon cutting occurs for the reopening of RedGate Park, that we wouldn't have a new sign, whether it be repurposed or completely replaced. That's to be determined, but what would your preference be?
I'd like to have the landscape sign that's there. That's been there since the golf course has been operating. That's what I was talking about.
Oh, you mean the one that's in the ground?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I got you.
Forgive me with the terminology. I didn't use the right thing.
No, that's all right. I got you. That's a good question. I don't see why any reason we couldn't leave it, but we'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
C. McAlpine?
Thank you. I'm going to echo what another people have said. The more nature, the less human construction, the better. And I visit the theater, which the performances there are run by nonprofits, and especially with the limitation on ticket sales, it's barely self-supporting, and the venue is severely used. If you'd like to have an outdoor space, there's plenty of outdoor space in open field, which already has parking lots and bathrooms and dressing rooms and things right there over at the Civic Center behind the F. Scott Fitzgerald Theater. There's a nice slope there. There's plenty of parking. And they even took out a playground that used to be there. So there's picnic tables and some grills, but it's not, I don't see people in Rockville coming out for all the live arts things that happen. We enjoy the smaller ones that are at the different little community parks that move around. In the past, you had some like movie nights at the swimming pool. You know, you've got other places that could have temporary stages that already have facilities. I am deeply opposed to building a venue and having all those people driving there, especially at night, and agree that the impact on the wildlife, the traffic, that road is not designed. It's very, plenty of car accidents along there. So I also want to suggest connecting the park to the parks that are surrounding it, like Rock Creek Park and the Forest Preserve and the Nature Center with overpass, some kind of connections there, because this is not a standalone open area. It's in the midst of other green natural spaces. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leah Rosenbaum?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I just wanted to echo a lot that's been said about keeping it as natural as possible. I primarily go there to walk my dog, but I really do appreciate the peace and quiet. And while I do enjoy walking my dog there, I don't necessarily feel that a dog park is needed. But yeah, I've been very pleased with the comments that I've heard before me of keeping it as wild as possible. So thank you very much for the presentation. I really thought you seem to have really taken a lot of the comments already into consideration. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a user named Owner.
I think that's me. This is Chip
Yes.
Boylan. And I have a question and then possibly a comment based on your answers. In this new plan, what percentage of the park is forest meadow versus passive park versus active park?
We don't have those numbers at this point. So you're interested, like, how much is forest meadow, how much is active, and how much is passive?
Yes. And from
we know that, it's probably, I would say under 15% would actually be active. So, 85, 95, or 85, 90% of the park is passive uses, but I don't know the percentage forest or meadow at this point. We didn't calculate that.
Okay, so I have a comment based on that answer. Given the city's master recreation and parks strategic plan, which the mayor and council, the current mayor and council adopted in 2020, and the many existing needs for active parks in the city, and the fact that there's very little additional space available for adding active parks and the growing population of the city, I think this plan has far too little active park space in it. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any additional hands that have been raised. So I think at this point, I know that we've received several comments and questions in the chat. So I can go ahead. We can move on to those that have come in through the chat. I will take them from the top. again, some of these were comments, some of them were questions. I'll just go ahead and read them, and we can approach them one at a time again. So this is from C. McAlpine. The comment, this plan is a silo rather than a system view of open space, nature trails, playgrounds, and entertainment. What is done cannot be undone. Do less and make connections to what exists. Add play and gathering space at Town Square. Put the amphitheater at Civic Center where infrastructure and entertainment venues already exist. Have bridges to connect people to David Hayes Forest Preserve and Rock Creek. No public transit to the space. The next one from Leah Rosenbaum. 60% of Rockville families have no children. I believe that was the end of the comment. The next one from Joseph Jordan. Has there been a firm decision to not have a dog park?
The first question that I've heard, no, there has not been any firm decision on that, Joe. One way or another.
Very good. Next question from C. McAlpine. Question 15,000 seats. That would be referring to the amphitheater. Seems like lots of people driving with stress on environment and existing limited access. Avery Road, lots of human intervention. I think if you can maybe just provide some clarification on the potential number of seating at the amphitheater.
Yeah, so the seating, a big part of that would be lawn seating. So it would not be fixed seating, but blankets and people bringing portable chairs. And in terms of the parking, that's where we would envision using sixth half court as well as some of the potential shared parking along sixth half court with some of the buildings that are there. Having I understand your comment about Avery Road capacity, but there would have to be some, if you had a large event there, there'd be some management of the traffic and guiding people to different entrances to take advantage of the parking that already exists in the area.
Thank you. There is a question from Fran Miller. Can you explain water space?
Water space?
Water space, correct. I think perhaps, Tom, I'm guessing that they probably heard it during your presentation.
Yeah, I don't think I said any, or I may have accidentally said water space, but I didn't intend to because I don't know what it is. So that might have been a mistake. Is that something you heard?
Maybe it's this individual misheard what was being said. We can go ahead and move on. Another comment from C. McAlpine. Again, this is all very suburban, needing people to drive. Consider a memorial garden or children's garden. This is the first nature, first human, second, consider that undeveloped Avery Road connects to Nature Center and Forest Preserve with additional creek, lawn, playground, and picnic space already there. Perhaps a pedestrian bridge connecting the two spaces that avoids silo, pollinators, and native plants equals yeah. Plant, animal, and bird habitat, also a recommendation from them. Let's see, from Catherine Carter. Thank you very much for this call. I look forward to all of the plans for RedGate. I am an event planner in the area and I love the park. From C. McAlpine, no dog park. There's a question, will these remove some of the existing trails?
We would anticipate that some of the existing trails would be removed. The one commenter had made the great point about appreciating some of those steep sections for a good workout. So we want to certainly keep some of those areas, but some portions of trails are in poor condition and would want to remove some of those. Also, since we need to add some more trails, try to create a balance and not have a net gain of paved surface, but try to balance that with the removal of some of the existing ones that might not be as serviceable.
And the only thing I would add to what Tom said is we will reuse as many of those as is practicable. Yeah, there are some sections that just need to be removed.
Will there be educational placement plaques to help folks learn more about the birds in the area, in addition to the arboretum, trees, and plants?
That's the hope.
What about linking up RedGate paths with a trail from Rock Creek Park?
Oh, if I had a magic wand, we would absolutely do that, and we would have a connection over 28 that takes us over to the Civic Center property and the Nature Center. That's longer term. I know it's desirable, so I'm sure the concept will not go away, but in the short term, that's probably, I don't want to say a bridge too far, but that's probably stretching it a little bit farther than we can at this point. But we absolutely hear that interest and desire and are constantly thinking about ways we can actually make that happen.
There is a comment that maybe bathrooms can be closer to infrastructure to Taft Court. There is a question. Unfortunately, I missed the entire presentation. Will this recording be available? So we are recording this presentation and we can go ahead and post it on the website at engagerockville.com and make that available for you all to view. Let's see, scrolling through some of these, some are just comments. See, from Martha Morris, I agree with the question about the need for an amphitheater. There are other locations in Rockville that would be more appropriate and have sufficient parking. Concerns about trash and restroom usage. A question that came in through Slido. This individual supports dog park in the area that doesn't disrupt the main center of the park, perhaps on the edge. Another question that came in through Slido. Neil, I'm in favor of keeping the park wild and as natural as possible, but would like to see more dog-friendly space. It's more of a comment, suggestion. Here's a question. Clarify difference between active and passive park space.
Great question. So active park space would be, for example, like the amphitheater or the playground areas where there's specific programmed uses. Passive space would be trails, the nature, just open lawn areas that are there for beauty, but also could be for informal gathering or picnicking and things like that. Not a lot of infrastructure involved in those uses.
There's a question from Ann Goodman, or a comment. Oppose amphitheater because of noise, lights, parking, and traffic. There's another question. How many current parking spaces at RedGate?
I believe it's about 143 or so in the main lot, and then about 170 at 6 Taft Court. But in the existing parking lot at RedGate, I believe it's about 143.
Yeah, that sounds right.
There's a comment about a dog park. The only reason I can see for a dog park at RedGate is to keep unleashed dogs from the park. Too many dog owners let their dogs off leash now. Here's with the city's growing population and very limited ability to add parks or expand existing parks, RedGate will have to serve a variety of constituencies in the city, including birds, bees, dogs, and most of all, people. Another comment from Sarah Bullock. I'd like to reiterate about the use of park of the land for a rugby Gaelic pitch. We live in a very multicultural area, and these two sports bring a very big cultural aspect to a community park. There are no other rugby Gaelic pitches in Montgomery County. Having an international flavor to the area would be beneficial to the entire community. Question from Pat Klein. Could the clubhouse be used as an education center for lectures, presentations on nature, wildlife, and habitat conservation?
It absolutely could, once it's renovated.
I'm in favor of keeping the park wild and as natural as possible, but would like to see more dog-friendly space. That was a comment entered by Neil. And from Sarah Bullock, has the idea of adding a shuttle or bus service from the metro to the park been suggested?
It has not come up.
So those are all the questions in the chat that I see thus far that have come in. Let me see if there's any other raised hands. I do not see any either.
Whoops, we have one now. Councilwoman Ashton.
I just wanted to, I don't want to weigh in because I want to be as neutral as possible and just be in listen mode. But I do want to thank everyone who's taken the time to provide input today, as well as staff and our consultant. We really appreciate all that you're doing to help us envision the future of Rockville and RedGate.
Thank you. I see that there may be some additional comments rolling in. Let's see. I think that what people love about RedGate right now is that it is pretty wild. I support keeping it that way. Another comment, outdoor recreation fields were one of the amenities that came out of the October 2021 council meeting. What happened?
What happened, I think, as I tried to say in the intro, the initial top 10, if you will, amenities included fields and a walking track. But as we got more input from the public, and as mayor and council deliberated, we felt like it was just really packing too many active things into the park for the phase one of its development. At least that's my interpretation of what happened. Again, I don't see RedGate being done evolving after this process at all. It's 133 acres, Chris, of developable land. 131. So there's future possibilities, but what happened was, I think that the sense was it was maybe biting off more than we can chew to start with.
From Shannon, I think an amphitheater is a great idea. You can always manage the number of people attending. Plus, people can walk and or ride their bikes there. I also love the idea of having a dog park within walking distance of Burgundy Hills. And that was the last comment.
Well, if there aren't any other questions or comments, I would like to, whoops, I think we just got a hand up. Okay.
Fran Miller, go ahead.
Might be on mute.
Fran?
Having an amphitheater there, I think, is a very good idea. And the atmosphere at RedGate would be very different. People compare to the Rockville Town Square, and it's totally different because you're having picnics outdoors while there's music playing or whatever is happening that particular day or evening. And you're surrounded by, you know, the birds and the trees and all of the foliage. And I think it's very different from Rockville Town Square. It's much more open. So I would be in favor of the amphitheater.
Thank you. All right, let's try this one more time. Any final questions? Seems to be slowing down. And let me follow up Councilwoman Ashton's comments and thank each and every one of you for your time and your thoughts and your sharing your perspectives with us. This is a once in a lifetime type project for a city the size of Rockville. To have 131 acres to reimagine is an exciting and it's a fun process to go through. So thank you all for your part in this entire effort. Any last thoughts, anyone else? And thank you. Tom, good job.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
guys.